There's been an astounding increase in transportation leaders using artificial intelligence in the past year. That's according to a recent survey by Penske, and we're going to explore the ways that fleets are using AI and what some of their concerns are about this new technology on this episode of HDT Leadership Insights. I'm Deborah Lockridge. I'm editor and associate publisher of Heavy Duty Trucking, and joining me today is Tim Haynes. He's vice president of digital and customer data for Penske Transportation Solutions. And this episode of Leadership Insights is sponsored by and produced in partnership with Penske. So, Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deborah.
So, Penske recently released a survey of transportation leaders, and it found that the number of respondents who were using AI had jumped from 17% last year to 70% this year, which is like an amazing increase. What do you believe is driving that? What kind of insights did that survey come up with, and also from your personal experience?
So I think a lot of it has to do with I'll say the publicity that artificial intelligence is getting. That's part of it, because the more you hear about it, the more you see it, the more, and if you haven't learned about it, you want to see what it's about. And then it's starting to figure out, all right, how does this apply to my business? How can I use this? And a lot of things that people are using it for are to improve efficiencies. So a lot of times looking at a lot of data, being able to have someone, or instead of someone going through it, it's a machine or artificial intelligence is looking at it and doing the categorizations. That's great. The question is, how do you apply that? And so I think a lot of the companies are looking at, how do I use this? And they're exploring it. They've heard for the last couple of years, ChatGPT, large language models, all the buzzwords that are out there. And they're starting to say, how does that apply to me? And how can I make use of that?
So what are some of the areas where these respondents were using AI and were finding it benefited them?
How do I optimize either my driver routes, or how do I optimize my loads or things like that? They can use that with data that they have and that they can control and they know is I'll say, high enough quality. How do I optimize my loads? How do I load my truck the right way? Meaning I've got multiple deliveries. Let's make sure I package things so that it's, first on is last off, because you don't want to have to unload everything. So I think that's where you're seeing some of it. Where Catalyst gives them an advantage is looking at things that they don't necessarily have the information on.
We're talking about Catalyst AI, and in case anybody didn't know, it was a program service that Penske introduced, about a year ago? And just brief overview of that.
So Catalyst AI it was launched, the first version was launched in April of 2024. And what it is it allows you to do an apples to apples comparison. So if you look at miles per gallon, there are a lot of studies that are done on an annual basis that says Class 8 vehicles get, I'm just picking a number, get 5.5 miles per gallon. But that doesn't take into account the load, the geography, the type of truck, the specs, whether you're over the road, whether you're short haul. It's like it doesn't take any of that into account. So if you're running at 6, you might think that's great. But if you're running feathers across the plains, 6 probably isn't good. If you're running steel across the plain or steel across the mountain, maybe that is great. So Catalyst allows you to do an apples to apples comparison of what your fleet, how it's operating. And so it's the first of its kind out there, and it's using a lot of data, and it's using artificial intelligence to go through that, and it's also using humans as well to make sure that it makes sense, that we're not coming up, and I'll just use an example. Sometimes the devices that are on the trucks say that they're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Well, that's probably not a good data point to be using when you're trying to figure out where the truck is or what the mileage is, because trucks driving in the water doesn't make sense. And that's part of, I'll say, the trust is, it's like looking at things and saying, does that make sense? It's the data can say some things, but you have to have quality data, and you have to make sure that things are making sense.
Talking about things like, can you trust the data? And, I've seen some news articles recently about AI hallucinations.
Right.
There was a summer reading list that was AI and that had books that were non-existent. I've seen legal cases where AI is coming up with non-existent cases for court briefings. How do people ask that kind of question? Is it accurate? Is it going to come up with hallucinations? How do you address that?
So it gets back to some of the basics of when you're building a model. It's how are you building it? How are you training the model? And what's the data going into it? So we get millions of messages a day, and so there's a lot of information that comes in. Is all of it accurate? And my point about data points in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, that can happen. It truly does. So part of it is making sure that we know what the data is that should be going in for each of these values, and making sure that it makes sense. My odometer shouldn't be going backwards. My mileage, or not my mileage, my truck shouldn't be in the middle of the ocean. And so there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that the quality of the data going into the model is appropriate for what the model is trying to do. And we've got a team of data analysts and data scientists and data engineers who that is their job, is to make sure that when we get data, it's passing through a whole number of quality tests throughout to make sure that we've got the right data to train the model. And then there's training the model, there's checking the output against validated information. So when a truck comes in, it's not just what we're getting from the telematics device. When a truck comes in, and when you take your vehicle into a dealership, they plug it in because there's an onboard computer. And let's validate what we're getting to what we actually see on the onboard computer. Make sure that the data matches. So there's all of that, and then there's constant checking of the data, so you don't get drift, so you don't get hallucinations. So drift meaning things as the data comes in, are you starting to skew the data because there's some value that's off a little bit? And so you're constantly reevaluating the models. It's not a set it and forget it. It's something that you always have to look at and work with the team to make sure that this makes sense. And right now, there's the AI piece of it, and then there's a people part of it, and that's the Penske's expertise saying, does this make sense?
So you've had Catalyst AI out for about a year now, but now Penske's launched a next generation with some really interesting features.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So the first version of Catalyst AI was focused on the fleet, looking at your whole fleet. So when I used the example of 5.5 miles per gallon earlier, that would have been aggregate for the whole fleet. But say you've got 50 to 100 trucks. That doesn't do you a whole lot of good in terms of telling you where you can go to increase your or improve your miles per gallon. So I'll say the first two components of it is we're getting down to a unit level. So you can actually see exactly every single truck in your fleet that is connected and is sending us information. We can tell you what the miles per gallon is on that. We can tell you what the impacting metrics are. But let's say your idle time is high for that particular vehicle. You're running at 30% idle time, and the standard might be 25% idle time. And so that's impacting your miles per gallon and giving you a way to talk to your drivers about, how do I improve this? So as a fleet manager, you can see, wait a minute, this truck is running at 30, maybe 40% idle time. Either the rest of your fleet or the comparison set that you're going against is at a much lower. Well, why is that? Well, let's talk to the driver. Why are you running high idle times? What about shutting down your engine? What about doing things that can help improve your miles per gallon? Another feature are the advanced maintenance metrics. So looking at things like, so Penske offers full service leasing, and with that comes maintenance. But we have to have the maintenance done on time, making sure that it's being done when it should be. So we schedule that with the customers, but if they don't schedule it on time, that can impact the performance of your vehicle. Then we get into, I think a really cool feature is the thing called Fantasy Fleet.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about. I said, that sounds intriguing. Tell us about how that works.
I kind of saved that one towards the end, but Fantasy Fleet is, you may see your vehicles are running really well against the comparison set. against your peers who are running similar vehicles in like situations. And you're still sitting there going, okay, but what can I do to get better? Fantasy Fleet takes a look at not a comparison of the fleet itself, it's actually taking each of your vehicles and finding the best performing vehicle out there. And then saying, okay, if you're running 6, the best one out there is running 7. Well, what do they have? What's different about it? Or how are they operating differently? So you think in terms of like fantasy football, you're trying to find the best team, the best players, you make it out of the best players. This is finding the best vehicles that are similar to yours in terms of performance and giving you an idea of how you can perform better. So maybe you're hauling, maybe you're doing all over the road and you don't have aero packages on your vehicle. And the best performing vehicles that are similar to yours, the only difference is they have aero packages. So that is an area that you could improve. So this is taking the best of the best and showing how you compare against your fleet and also showing how it compares against the overall matching fleet. So it really goes down to the vehicle level and shows you opportunities of how you can perform better. And then the final feature that we offered is hubs. And hubs are, if you've run multiple distribution centers, the ability to compare one distribution center against another. And it shows you each vehicle in that distribution center. It shows you, so if, again, I keep picking MPG because that's the easiest. It'll show you, you've got 10 vehicles. It'll show you the average for your distribution center. It shows you the distribution, so your top 10, your bottom 10, your middle 80%. And we're really giving the fleet managers the ability to drill in and say, okay, why is my fleet performing the way it is, and where are those opportunities?
Any other final thoughts on AI to share?
So there's been, I'm going to use the word hype over AI. It's been out there for a while. It's been in our lives for a very long time. And you think about what you're using with things like the spell checker and the autocorrect, and you ask your phone to get something for you. That's all different types of AI. It's the introduction of it and the speed that we have seen things in the last couple of years. I think that's got people a little bit nervous, but AI has been around for quite a while. And so it's like, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. It's like, okay, this isn't as new as I think it is. And we actually trust it with a lot of things that we don't even think about. You look at Netflix, you look at any of these online streaming services, you look at Amazon, they're all tailoring what they're telling you to watch based on what your history is. That's a form of AI.
Sure.
So it's there. It's in your life already. Introducing it into a B2B application when it's been spreadsheets and paper and, hey, this is what my gut's telling me. Your gut's not wrong. It's now you have a tool that helps you validate what your gut has been telling you. And I think that's a bit of a shift, because as humans, we can only take in so much data and process so much data at a time. I said we get millions of messages. We get over 300 million messages a day from our vehicles right now. That equates to more than 3,500 messages per second. How many of those can you actually process? And
Wow.
what's noise and what's real? And how do you filter? That's where AI, that's where the power of AI is really helping. And then how do you get that into a model that turns it into something that means something to the business? So like how we process that and how we accept that and the change that's coming with that are all kind of coming together at the same time, which to me is really exciting to see how the tools can help us move forward, as opposed to, and it's not a matter of necessarily replacing people, it's a matter of making people more efficient at what they do. It's another tool. It's not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another tool. So it's like those examples I think about some of the AI hallucinations. It's like they didn't have anybody, I guess, sort of checking up on it. They weren't using it as a tool. They were, I don't know, letting it do its thing without some supervision or without checking the data. But I know Penske's got so much experience with data and all the data you have that, with the tool like you've got, you're definitely keeping an eye on that kind of stuff.
We've got teams of people working on this, because it's important. It's important
Yeah.
to our customers. And that's the whole thing. It's like, how are we helping our customers and making sure that they're able to do their business?
Thanks, Tim, for chatting with us about AI today. It's always interesting insights that you bring to the table. Thanks to our audience for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe to HDT Talks Trucking on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, because you'll also find Leadership Insights on there as well.